Thank you, Ericom, and thank you, Mr. Shantanu. I was supposed to be one of the panelists, and Shantanu at the 11th hour decided that, look, we need some legal brains. So I was looking at that background and I was wondering, this is made in India brains. That's lovely. Okay, we have the introduction of all the members, and I'm actually delighted to be amongst all of them. Professor Sharma, Mr. Sehgal, I know for a couple of years. Mr. Sharma, I met him almost about 15 years ago, and then we've had a meeting again today. Welcome, Father Manuel and Mr. Shetty. Welcome, all of you. Okay, basically, I think the heads and the managements need to understand about their status, what are they, and where are they heading with the legal jargons and the legal battles they have to fight. Where is the law taking education? And do we really understand the nuances of law, or are we caught in a web that is very difficult to come out? So, like a good lawyer, I'm going to request the panelists out here to take an oath that they'll speak the truth and nothing else the truth. The reason is that there are going to be certain tough questions for them, and I'm sure that Mr. Emmanuel may find it very interesting to answer them, especially when it's concerning the boards also. I sometimes wonder that what are school managements? Are they an industry, or are they professionals? Do they have a legal status? Are they proprietorships, or they partnerships? So, or are they missionaries, or are they NGOs? What are these school managements? I think I'm going to put this question straight to Mr. Sehgal because he represents private management. So, Mr. Sehgal, would you tell us, before I come into the legal issues and the legal problems which are coming up in education, especially in India, how do you define the private managements? How do you define the entity of private? How do you identify them?
Hello. Yeah. If I talk about the rules and regulations, I think I'll be not doing justice to Mr. Salman sitting here. But we are all as confused as the matter is. Because as far as the setting up of the schools is concerned, we all know that the schools in India can be started only by registered societies or trusts. Even if a particular school is sponsored by a company, still you have to come out with a society or trust and we are considered charitable. And that is how the school education in India, as far as the private managements are concerned, was started. But the times have really changed. Because if I talk about the government support system to private schools, what it was 40 years ago, can be explained with a very, very small example. That all those schools in Delhi, those who were established in 1950s or so, they got land from landowning agencies with a license fee of 1 rupee. There are schools, and I also belong to one of those schools, those who got its land in 1944, 1958, and 1 rupee license. Now, can we today think of a scenario where a society or a trust wants to establish a school and it goes to get a piece of land? Is it possible to get it on 1 rupee? Now, here there is a dilemma. On one side, we say that the charitable organizations should come forward, establish private schools, but on the other side, the government support system to private schools and private establishments is diminishing. It is actually opposing. I will only close my comments with this.
Thank you, Mr. Sehgal. Now, I'm going to ask Professor Sharma. See, India has one of the largest population of schools, and we need to provide them good education. About 93% of the schools are government schools, and 7% are private schools. As compared to that, 40% of education to students is provided by the private sector, and about 60% by the government sector. So why is the government not wanting to declare education as an industry, give it a very legal, legitimate status, and let it expand, let it grow, because we need so much of education in this country. As of today, we need almost about more than 1.25 lakh teachers. There are so many post vacants. So how do you address that issue?
You sworn me to the truth.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing is the truth.
The kinds of places where government schools are set up, it would not be viable for a private industry to run it at all. There are schools where the entire village provides about 40 children across classes 1 to 5. A building is set up, 2 teachers are sent into that, midday meal is sent in there, scholarships are sent in there, and that school runs. Which is what causes the loss if you look at the whole complete canvas of 15 lakh schools that we're talking of. And then say how much of money is being poured into it and why it's a loss-making proposition. Now, I do not believe industry is ready to pick up this step. At the same time, the government, frankly, if you look at it simply as a social construct, that today we have a viable alternative, we have schools which have managed to flourish, managed to seek the interest of parents who can pay, and managed to self-sustain whatever enterprise that they are running. We have a viable alternative, an alternative which will perhaps tell the government that maybe there is an alternate way of looking at it. Maybe we don't need to always think in terms of government schools. The PPP model perhaps emanated from this kind of at least an apprehension, if not a considered opinion, that we need to open out certain sectors of schooling. If today it is possible for us to give education to all our children, and I don't believe the government has, misslept when it said we want a Right to Education Act. I think it's pretty courageous in saying that we want a Right to Education Act in this country. If we can create a viable alternative, and by trying to say that it should become an industry, by trying to say it should be privatized, by trying to say that it should become a profitable enterprise, what you are perhaps alluding to is ways in which quality can be enhanced. The money that's being poured into government schools is also taxpayers' money as much as any other. There is no reason why all of us together should not demand better education of that school. There is no reason why all of us should not take to court the government and say the Right to Education Act should be implemented. All the quality parameters that are listed in the Right to Education Act should actually be found there. So the playgrounds that we are promising children, the libraries that we are promising children, the right to education that we are promising children should also be founded. If in an ideal situation, please give me a few seconds. In an ideal situation, it would have been best that the government minds its business and leaves the society to educate its children. Unfortunately, it's only now in the recent times that private enterprise finally has caught up with it and said, we will mind our business. Give it a little time. Let all the private people come to a point where they believe that they can cater to the education of these people who cannot pay or who perhaps have not yet appreciated the value of payment. I don't believe that they can't pay. Maybe there are a large segment of people who can't pay. There will be some people who can pay but do not still appreciate the value of the returns on that payment. If we reach that point, it would be the right time for us to tell the government, now we can educate ourselves, please go ahead and find other ways to spend your money.
I think hats off to Professor Sharma, the first government officer who's spoken the truth and so boldly that he's crystallized the whole issue. Government should now mind its business, because the way private school or education has been strangulated in this country, it's huge. But taking this forward, probably I'll put this question now to Mr. Emmanuel, that, you see, when we talk about right to education, in 2010, this act was passed by the Parliament and also notified by the President of India. 3 years were given to the government to start 6,000 schools in every block. One school in every block. So there's 6,000 blocks. So we need to have 6,000 schools. We are in 2015. Under this 6,000 school plan, 2,500 schools were to come under the PPP project, and 3,500 the government was supposed to initiate. As of now, We don't even find even 5% of the schools which have opened under the Right to Education Act. So how would the board, CBSE or ICSE, how do you react to this sort of act, which itself is a self-defeating act and it is not practical?
Well, private-public system working very well in India, especially with ISC schools are concerned. A number of private players into the council schools. They're investing a lot of money and they're producing the quality students. To be testified, Mr. Prakash Shantanu is our council student here. Would you mind standing up? He's a living example for the council. Which, there are a number of people since the last 50-80 years. Council is contributing immensely for the country, very, very well. And the council, does it interpret much like the CBSE, the way it is. CBSE doesn't need NOC from the various state governments. The council requires NOC from the various state governments. Because of that reason, we are not able to increase our number. The CBSE doesn't. Yeah, but what happened? CBSE required. CBSE circulated letter. I have the copy with me.
I think we should appreciate Dr. Manan's viewpoint because in absence of Dr. Satbir, so he has the rights to say whatever he wants. Let's take it.
No. I'm telling you. Trust me. CBSE says only recognition is needed, but NOC is not required. Even if they don't produce NOC, they're affiliated.
Dr. Emmanuel, sorry for the interjection, but I basically wanted to understand. I hope everyone out here is aware of the Right to Education Act. It may sound very beautiful, Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act. Okay. Now, having gone and studied this act at length and argued before the Supreme Court as well as the High Court, we find that this was more like a political gimmick rather than actually a noble cause. And it is actually, if you are able to read every line of this part of legislation, it has killed the visions of principles, it has strangulated and trampled the visions of all private sector schools. How do you react to that? And after you answer, I'll ask Mr. Shetty to put answer to this question also. Dr. Emmanuel first.
As per we're concerned, it's really a noble action. As a society, you and me bound to do something for the poor and needy. As the society is getting polarized into haves not. Number of people don't have the privilege. Some of us have the privilege of getting educated in private convents, private schools. There are a number of children who don't have that opportunity. The government, why is it not provide and give an opportunity? It's up to you and me the way we deal with the matter. You see, you and me are required to help out the poor and needy. If we don't share our wealth, if we don't share our knowledge, if we don't share the skills that we have, how are they going to come up? It's going to be a problem for the whole India. Will be divided the entire nation into two parts. That's going to be a problem. At least somewhere we could begin admitting the people and we can extend some sort of help. There bound to be some communication gap, there bound to be some distances, there bound to be some, difference of levels of learning. But at the same time, schools can conduct remedial classes, schools can provide midday meals, schools can give free books, schools can give free education in many ways for the children. That's how we'll be able to help few people.
So let's have views of Mr. Shetty on this.
So Section 12(1)(c), so section specific part of the Right to Education Act, which is Section 12(1)(c), I think has been a little troublesome for private schools, which requires a reservation for children from low-income backgrounds in regular private schools. So I think this is, it's a recent act. What the value of this is yet to be seen. Whether learning levels in schools will fall as a result of including children from low-income backgrounds is to be seen. Whether these children from low-income backgrounds will integrate well within the classroom is to be seen.
Louder, please.
So I think essentially Section 12(1)(c) has been part of the issue, right, with the reservation. And I think many things there are yet to be seen as to what actually happens. In terms of compensation to schools, the government has offered to make compensation at the government rate, and as a result have declared their rate, right, which seems reasonably high.
So let me now reintroduce this point to you and also for the audience out here. When you talked about compensation, I think on an average, a private school spends something about 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per child per month. As compared to that, the government is reimbursing only about 1,600 to 1,800 rupees. So I don't know what sort of compensation or reimbursement are we talking about. Second, I think we are missing the point. We are not on the education to be provided for the have-nots. I think that's a very noble cause to provide education for all. But after 5 years, if the government is going to realize that the detention policy was bad, and today they are changing this, how many years is going to take for the government to realize that even other aspects, other points of the Right to Education Act were pretty horrifying? So I want to put a question to Mr. Pramod Sharma and also to Professor Saab out here. Do we really need to experiment every time and then prove that we are a failure in education? Or do we need to have a pilot project done? Or do we need to have a pilot project done first, experiment with 1 school, 2 school, 10 school in every state, and then probably come out with a white paper, put it to the parliament, let it be debated, and then we come with a holistic plan?
You see, I don't know whether you were around. I'll take an example of UP. In every district of UP, there used to be a government intermediate college in UP. And they were the best schools in the district. Till we tried to regulate, and by regulating, we have only spoilt it all. It is very easy to say that in RTE, the government will provide, but has the quality in the government schools increased or improved? It has not. I think the time is to leave. When the government goes out and says, invest in railway system, invest in airport system, invest in roads, invest in what not? Why not in education? The rote learning system of education, which we know in this India, in this country as the only system of education, I think it has served its purpose. It is not for me to say that the textbooks and the curriculums keep pace and keep changing according to ideological beliefs of the ruling government. The country's icons and country's heroes keep changing, and I don't have to mention it, you know it well. The thing is, if you will leave it to the schools to operate, there are far too many examples, good examples I can give you, where good experiments are being done by schools, but it definitely over-regulation. It's a story of over-regulation. There is a lot of talent in this country. And in this regulation and over-regulation, I'll take just one more minute. What happens? We talk about standardizing, scalability, finding out, then it results in more assessment, it results in more testing and more testing. What about joys of learning? What about intangibles of education, which were more important in our time? All those intangibles are gone, the joys are gone. We are only talking about tangibles, how to assess who's good, how many 98%. If you had CCE, how many schools have how many 10 CGPAs? Oh, come on. When were you supposed to consider 10 CGPA is important? But you see, school list after list, 10 CGPA, how many 10 CGPA? So I think time is to deregulate and leave it to us. We'll run it much better.
I think I'll request Professor Rajaram Sharma to make the comment on the last issue. So we'll come back to you, Dr. Emmanuel.
So you will continue to permit me to be frank about this.
Sir,
I think it is stemming from an arrogance of thought that there are some people who understand education better than the others. That education is happening in the private schools and it's not happening in the government schools. What is happening in the private schools is schooling. What's happening in the private schools is well-dressed children being herded through a more sophisticated train. At the end of it, the products are all similar. The unemployability is being measured on wrong terms. The fact that I can parrot more facts in English does not make me any more intelligent than someone who cannot parrot out those things in English. If we revert back to, and I apologize for picking up an example of a person who just presented just before us a short while ago. We said we have got all these fancy tools, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, and then said, come, let's look at the textbooks, and we put up the NCERT textbook there. What was written on top of it across the paper? It said this is a copyrighted book and that you shall not republish it. We picked this up, we sold it to the schools bought it, and we all pray by, or watch by value systems. I don't believe that we have really spent adequate time and thought on what education ought to be, and this is exactly what Mr. Pramod Sharma was trying to remind us just now. Certainly, the fanciness of what transpires in classrooms must be very much lower in a government school, but that's about what we can afford. Let's raise ourselves to a point where we talk of equitable education for all and not equitable schooling. The money that is being poured into the private schools is disproportionate to what the private school is achieving. And I challenge you to that. You just put up all the 10 textbooks that you choose. I will show you 1,000 mistakes in the NCERT textbook. I have been in this business for 20 years now. And I can show that to you. And I will promise you there will be far larger number of mistakes printed in far better glossier paper with far better font and printing technology. That has improved the font.
I think Professor Sharma, you rightly taken the cause of NCERT, and I'll probably give my card to you to file a case against them also. That's probably fine. But here we are on a very narrow issue, and probably we need to understand the legal nuances. Why is private sector education getting strangulated? And why are the laws so stiff against private sector? Whereas, when you come to the government schools, I don't find anywhere any principal or teacher that hauled up for a mishappening or for a particular issue or for not delivery, etc. Now, you yourself said that we are waiting for the day when private sector will say, yes, government, please step back, and now we need to take over. Now, there seems to be a lot of issues on that also. I'll ask Mr. Sehgal to answer that, and probably also Mr. Pramod Sharma. Why are the private sector schools being maligned as commercial organizations? So therefore, when I put the first question to all of you out here is, are you a proprietorship? Are you a company? Are you missionary? What are you? So ultimately you need to redefine yourself so that you are able to face the government and say that we are educationists, we are professionals. So please spare us from the harrowing legislation which have been thrown at us, and it's a very mocking experience. So probably I'll ask Mr. Sehgal to redefine yourself as private educationists. Why are you not coming forward and saying to the public that, look, do not call us commercial organizations, we are not commercial. Because every aspect of legislation is hitting you as a commercial organization, as a person who's trying to steal money from rich and then pocket that also. Please.
I fully agree with you, as you said very rightly. And taking over some points which Professor mentioned, and I actually do not fully agree with that. Professor said if we talk about education, then the private schools are spending much more money as compared to what the government is spending. I don't think so, because government is using taxpayers' money to fulfill the commitment which it has made to the citizens of India. Through the Right to Education Act, it is government's duty to provide education free of cost to all children, between the age group of 6 and 14. Whereas even after 5 years of passing of that Right to Education Act, there are many states which have not accepted Right to Education Act. Let me give you the example of Delhi, where the schools took a lead. We started admitting 25% children from economically weaker section background, and let me mention here that even when Right to Education Act was not there, private schools were admitting. Private schools were providing free education to quite a large number of children. There were many schools which were running special schools in the afternoon, only for this. But appreciating that government is talking about inclusion, where everybody has to sit together and study, we accepted it. But where is the reimbursement which was mentioned? Government of Delhi calculated an amount of 1200 rupees, 1190 to be exact, 2 years ago, to be reimbursed to schools which are providing education to economically weaker section children. That money has never come. No penny has been paid. Even today, I have around 600 children in my school, those who are from economically weaker section background. When we talk about the initiative taken by the schools, let me tell you, if you walk into a classroom, you will not be able to distinguish who is the child who is from economically weaker section background and who is from the fee-paying background. This is the achievement of the schools, because once we take up this responsibility, as we have been doing it in the past, we will do it wholeheartedly. But then these pieces of legislations should come after thorough discussions, lot of experimentation, how it will go, so that it doesn't fail in future.
Since good people are not wealthy enough to open up schools, or probably they don't have ill-gotten money or they don't have assets, so therefore let the industry come down and open up and take over schools. Is that what you're suggesting? Am I right?
I should be thankful for two things in my life. One, I never worked in Delhi, so I don't know what Delhi Education Act. Delhi Education Act, what it means, I don't know.
So you missed a lot actually.
And the second thing, I should be thankful to God that I didn't start my own school.
Okay, good. Let's have the view of Mr. Sehgal on this particular issue. So, good to feel that the laws which are being enacted now are primarily not encouraging good people, good educationists to come forward, or even noble missionaries to come forward unless and until they're supported by a temple or a church or anything else.
Definitely so. I am fully convinced on that. The recent legislations which we were talking about just now, Delhi, and I am again mentioning to Delhi because other states definitely later on will pick up out of these, because Delhi School Education Act and rules were, I think, the first ones to be elected. When we talk about lower fees in school, again, you see, what we are doing in private schools is supporting government. We are providing education to children in that quality education that if near a private school there are 3 government schools available, still all children from economically weaker section will like to come to the private school and not go to that government school. This is the scenario in Delhi. This everybody knows about it. So even after providing that, and without any support from the government charges electricity at commercial rates from us. Property tax is also much higher. Earlier, all land developing agencies, those who used to develop lands, they are bound to have institutional areas in their localities, and they used to charge institutional land prices, which they have now shifted to auctioning. When we talk about legislation coming in, it is totally discouraging even the existing managing committees of the school to take certain initiatives. The new act says that in a school, 20 children, 20 parents, I will not say children, 20 parents or 5%, whichever is lesser. If they file a complaint, there will be an inquiry. If in a school which has 5,000 children on its rolls, only 20 parents, if they lodge a complaint, then the school's whole, everything will get, the time of the school management will be there just to get that inspection over and nothing else. Now these are the things which are very discouraging, and I am totally with you that not only to start a new school, but even to run an existing school these days is very, very difficult.
So Mr. Sehgal feel relate that with some of the provisions of the Right to Education Act and other acts also. Similarly in Oklahoma, it is against the law to open up a soda bottle without supervision of a licensed engineer. So I guess all the good level out there, we need to be more careful next time. So, in India, very uniquely, we have about 18,000 laws. In India, we take the state laws and the central laws. We have 18,000 laws. So somewhere in this part of the world, all of us are gathered out here. We may be committing some offense or the other. I don't know what, but it seems to be, hinting that too much of regulation. So therefore, it is said, law everywhere, but there is no space for education. That's what it looks like. Now, interestingly, in Texas, can we see there's another very strange law what we have. When two trains meet each other at a railroad crossing, each shall come to a full stop and neither shall proceed until the other has gone. Now, where are we heading for? So therefore what you are saying is that look, if some schools are doing good or some schools are bad, so we must have a uniform. But let's grow from this issue. Let's have an open mindset to education.
I never said we should have a uniform law. You are replacing
what I'm saying is that let's be open to it. Now education seems to be a very important factor. And in the same breath I'm trying to criticize the private sector also. Because they somewhere down the line they have also taken away the shine of missionary education. They have just taken it away. So let me complete.
Now, wait a minute, what do you mean by private education?
So before that, I'll just come to the last very beautiful law, which part the ladies would pardon me out here. In Los Angeles, there's an absurd law, which was fortunately repealed only just a couple of years back. A man is legally entitled to beat his wife with a leather belt or a strap, but the belt cannot be wider than 2 inches unless he has the wife's consent. See this? Where are we heading for? So therefore, what I was
very humorous.
What I'm trying to request to you is,
it's very funny, but that's
what I'm trying to request to you is when we need to grow as an education sector together. The government and the private sector needs to take everyone together. We're all stakeholders. We can't isolate anyone.
And I'm not going to speak on behalf of the government. They can speak for themselves and all that. All I'm saying is, it's not black or white. I think you're painting it as black and white. It's not black.
No, I'm painting it.
There's a nuanced discussion and we must treat it as such.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. But in the end, I will just tell all the respectable audience out here, and Professor Dinesh Singh Vajra probably is left. Okay, there's a very good phrase which I read, and probably if I have the permission of the panelists out here, may I just read that? Okay, every morning in Africa when the sun rises, a deer awakens, knowing it has to outrun the slowest lion, or be hunted to death. Every morning in Africa when the sun rises, a lion awakens, knowing it has to outrun the slowest deer or be starved to death. It does not make a difference whether you are fast or slow. You got to be doing your best. So that's my request to the private sector and the private principals out here that, look, whatever your duties and your obligations are, obviously you have to keep, especially in view of the fact that transparency and accountability is the most important aspect of education now. And I think we need to translate our acts through our good deeds, and we need to inculcate good habits and values amongst the students so that they look upon us that they are good educationists and good administrators. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Professor Sharma. With due respect, I would never anything against the government, but I'm just trying to tell we all need to work together. Thank you so much. Any questions?
On teacher level, pure charity. They are not. That's not a profitable thing at all. Am I right or not?
Absolutely.
And second thing, if suppose 25% EWL children go to your school, will they be integrated in your other students with the other students? There will be no class difference. Will there be class difference or not?
Can I answer?
Yes.
Mr. Saxena.
Well,
the last part first, about class difference. When in 70s I started teaching, there used to be a merit government's merit scholarship scheme, and the children were put in from modest homes into residential schools. And it is absolutely well known that they did not feel any disparity or disadvantage in a school, in a residential school, where principal was conscious of it, and today some of them are icons in different areas. And this I am sure you are aware. So it is ultimately left to the principal to, in a school which has higher fee structure and lower fee structure. And if you are talking about what you said about Punjab, about our UP is not far behind. We also run, now that you talked about 250 crores, we also run a school for special children. Largest school in this country. About my students, in my school there are about 1160 students. This special school has 1200 autistic, hearing impaired, mentally challenged, physically challenged children, and this school is running for 13 years. Not a penny has been charged as fees. It is one of the largest organizations in the country. Please come and see it. In my school itself, there are at least 70-75 children out of 1100 which need supports in different areas. And mind that I only admitted 20-30 children. Sorry, I'm taking a little longer. Sorry. So there are full-fledged inclusive setup which has occupational therapists, speech therapists, and everybody there. So it is possible to do your own thing. Why should government force you to do 25%? I'm doing 100%, more than 100%. So that is my point. That should be left to schools.
Thank you so much, everyone. Can we please give them a huge round of applause? We will request you to stay. I will now